in particular in the quarterfinals, there were so many marquee matchups, but none bigger than England and France. The two bigger the two biggest powerhouses in Europe. Again, France defeating England in the quarterfinals 2-1 yesterday. France, of course, the reigning World Cup champions. England, this star-studded group that perhaps has the most talented roster of any team in the tournament. And every single World Cup, regardless of the stage, whether it's the group stage, the knockout stage, there's, again, inherently this built-in context and this built-in intrigue because of the nature of the World Cup taking place every 4 years, because of the different nations that it's hosted by and hosted in. So what's very interesting is the context. I think that context is really important because if you talk to French fans versus English fans, context is what's going to determine the reaction from a game like this. And I think that what a team and what a nation's expectations are going into the tournament, I think there's a distinction between those expectations and the expectations of a team based on a game-by-game situation and also based on the results of a game, how those expectations are adjusted. Right? If you are a U.S. men's soccer fan, you're saying to yourself, well, the U.S. had a really good chance to beat England on Thanksgiving, and they ended up tying. Well, in the middle of the game, maybe you were satisfied with that result, but by the end of the game, maybe you were a little disappointed. For the English and the French, this context, this distinction is very important because entering the World Cup, the top 5 ranked teams in the world were Brazil, Belgium, Argentina, France, and England. Of those 5 teams, the only one going into yesterday's quarterfinal that had already punched their ticket to the semifinals was Argentina. Belgium inexplicably got bounced in the knockout round. Brazil was upset by Croatia, although I'd argue Croatia, while it was an upset, they lost in penalty kicks, and Croatia reached the World Cup final 4 years ago in Moscow, so not the biggest upset. And then Morocco's been the Cinderella team. They've been the Cinderella team of the tournament. Argentina was the only other team that had solidified themselves in the semifinals. So then it set up one more game between the two biggest powerhouses in Europe, France and England. Sorry, Germany, for this tournament and last tournament, not as relevant. And when I thought back about this matchup, because this was gluing me to the television set, I could not take my eyes off of England and France. Not only about the historical perspective, England's only World Cup title coming in 1966 when they hosted the tournament, but then just the last 4 years, why there was so much excitement, why there was so much optimism and buoyancy surrounding this English team, the fact that they reached the semifinals in 2018, the fact that they reached the finals of the European Championship in 2020, that's what sparked all this liveliness, all this buzz, and all this hope that this English team could finally prevail coming into this postseason. And then you combine that with the fact that France and England have met 31 times at the international stage. And England's beaten France in 2 World Cup meetings in 1966 when they hosted, in 1982. And conversely, the French national team, 2 times they've won the World Cup from an historical perspective, 1982, but most recently in 2018. And when you factor in that this is the reigning defending World Cup champions, who do you give the edge to? An English team that on paper looks better, or a French team that has perhaps more individual stars and they're the reigning champs? And when I was watching this game, England looked like the team in control. They did. All the stats bear it out. 57% percentage for England to 43 for France. They had more shots, England, 16, 8 shots on goal. The French national team had 8 shots, 5 shots on goal. More corner kicks for England. They earned 2 penalty kicks, did the Brits. Harry Kane made the first penalty kick, missed the second one that will likely haunt him for eternity and live in infamy, unfortunately, because Harry Kane is an incredible individual, an incredible player. That one's going to have a lasting impact on him and a scarring and traumatizing impact on him throughout the rest of his soccer career. It's just inevitable when you wear that English national team jersey. Every single miss is amplified and it's heightened. And yet, despite all of these stats, despite the fact that their attacks were building up, were methodical, were strategic, they were constant, you just had the feeling that the French team had England right where they wanted them. That was the sense that I had watching the game. That the French team, despite getting outpossessed, when they were threatening, they were a lot scarier and a lot fiercer threatening, in my opinion, was the French. And you look at how dynamic and explosive they are up top with Mbappe, Griezmann, Dembele, Giroud, who's filling in even without Karim Benzema. You look at the top scorers in the World Cup tournament. Mbappe leads all individuals with 5. Giroud is third with 4. So 2 of the top 3 scorers at the World Cup this year coming from the French national team. That's what they can do. And they're incredible on the counter. They're brilliant up top. And despite, again, the talent on the English side, and boy, do they have talent. I mentioned Harry Kane. This kid, Saka, is special, man. Saka and Bellingham, I think, were the 2 most important players on this English national team. Bellingham, tremendously physical, chippy, just has a depth and a deftness about him at creating space in tight spaces as well. He was tremendous. But again, Saka, I thought, was sensational. But they just started to lose a little bit of steam. And again, when you can, as an English national team, when you can bring in Marcus Rashford and Raheem Sterling off the bench as substitutes, it's like you've got a caged tiger. You've got caged tigers, plural, an embarrassment of riches at your disposal. But again, there was just this, even when Harry Maguire's header nearly got it in. Again, even that last penalty, that last free kick, rather, from Rashford that nearly went in at the end of the game, there was just this calmness to France. There was just this sense of familiarity, of comfort in this spot, in this big position for the French national team. And again, for as deep as England is, and I think they've got the deepest team, they arguably have the most passionate fans. Again, these hooligan fans exist in the Premier League. They are absolutely crazy in a good way. And the English Premier League is revered around the world, and the English fans are beloved and adored, and they absolutely should be. They're a tremendous team. But I can't say with good conscience that I thought England vastly outplayed France. Yes, the stats bear it out. Yes, they looked like the team more in control. But England needed to play their A game to beat France. And the French didn't need to. They could play their B game and still win. And that's what we saw on Saturday. The French didn't play their best game because England, their game plan was great. They had a great game plan to bottle up Mbappe. They prevented a lot of counters, but when France got the chances, they struck a little bit more fear and they took advantage of it. And again, this is why I just can't precisely say in good conscience that I thought England vastly outplayed France, and therefore I don't think they should be gravely disappointed. I think there should be a decent level of disappointment because they certainly were in a great position, had a great opportunity to win. And if you were to play out this same scenario 10 more times, the English team would take this situation where you're dominating possession, or not dominating, but you're controlling possession, you're dominating shots. You would take that every day of the week. But this was a tremendous, tremendous game. And now it sets up a great semifinal. Great semifinal. Argentina, Croatia, and now France against Morocco. So great tournament so far, but big time win for France, 2-1 over England.